So let's think about how we could improve these answers to this 10-mark question. Which of these caused greater sectional tension? Was it the Mexican Cession of 1848, or was it the publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin in 1852? So let's think about the Mexican Cession, thinking about things that do make it a great cause of sectional tension. Well, the prime cause of the Compromise of 1850 was this Mexican Cession, and the significant problems associated with this were a cause of the Mexican Cession. It caused great tension in relation to the admission of new lands, and serious friction about the size of Texas and the potential toppling of the sectional balance. So this political problems that were caused by the Mexican Cession were huge. Georgia and other southern states only conditionally agreed to the compromise and talked of secession. So Mexican Cession took place in 1848. Within 2 years, there was particular political turmoil that had to be patched up by the 1850 compromise. The crucial problem arose from the Wilmot Proviso and the growing question of political principle about whether or not Congress could stop slavery from spreading into the territories. This caused significant long-term problems, as did the use of the concept of popular sovereignty. Ultimately, these controversies led to the political crisis caused by the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So, the Mexican Cession provokes this debate on the point of principle as to whether or not Congress can stop slavery from spreading into the territories, and this point of principle, this debate, spills over into the future political crisis of the 1850s, and that's why the Mexican Cession is a big cause of sectional tension. But, to add a little bit of balance, the immediate issues of the Mexican Cession were dealt with by the Compromise of 1850, and in the short term, the sectional tension arising from the Mexican Cession was successfully dealt with. If we think about the publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin, it caused a spotlight to be focused on the morality of slavery. This angered Southerners who mounted a more vociferous defense of slavery as a positive good. It increased anti-slavery feeling in the North, and so it deepened Northern hostility towards the South. Coming 2 years after the passage of a fugitive slave law, it focused attention on this issue and Southern anger as a result of some Northern states passing personal liberty laws to stop slaves and free blacks from being captured. So the publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin was an important cause of sectional tension. However, tension surrounding the publication of the book had already been heightened because of events surrounding the Mexican Cession and the political wrangling over the new land won in the war with Mexico. So actually, the temperature of sectional tension had already been turned up by the Mexican Cession. The book did not have the same long-term impact on sectional tension as the issues of political principle surrounding the spreading of slavery into the Western territories. The book did not have the same long-term impact, did not lead to the political crisis that increased sectional tension significantly in the same way that the Mexican Cession did. So overall, the Mexican Cession and its aftermath caused greater sectional tension. If you think about your little essay task, about the things that you could have added. When it's talking about the roots of sectional tension, these roots being hardwired into the constitutional framework of the nation, we're talking about the 3/5 clause. We're talking about how this then meant it was in the interest of the South to continue to expand slavery, and for the North, it was in their interest to restrict it. The Constitution protected slavery and encouraged Southern states to stay united to maintain the power that slavery gave them. So the roots of sectional tension lay in this political reality of slavery's place in the Constitution causing long-term tension. If we think about the growth of slavery highlighting economic differences, think about the tariff issue. I think the South wanted low tariffs and the North wanted high. This is what the nullification crisis was about in 1833. South Carolina and Calhoun trying to defy President Jackson and Congress and wanting to nullify the tariff. The economies of North and South differed. The South relied on cotton exports, limited manufacturing. The North was more manufacturing-based, more diverse economy. As the country grew, so these economic differences increased. Once Texas was admitted as a slave state, this gave the South an advantage in the Senate, and they used this to pass lower tariffs in the late 1840s. We think about Western expansion into the Louisiana Purchase. We're thinking about the Missouri Compromise and the question of whether Missouri would be slave or free. We're thinking about the Missouri Compromise line, which stored up difficulties and divisions for the future. And we're thinking about the Mexican Cession, the Wilmot Proviso, Calhoun's Common Property Doctrine, and all of those things that caused long-term questions over whether new land should be slave or free. Think about the political attempts at compromise and how this exacerbated the existing tensions because they didn't really work. Then we've got the Compromise of 1850, which dealt with the immediate issues, but the concept of popular sovereignty stored up difficulties for the future. Popular sovereignty itself is an attempt to dodge the ultimate point of difference between North and South, although whether Congress had the right to stop slavery and the spreading of the territories. Compromise was really more of a truce. Think about the Georgia Declaration. It didn't solve the long-term sectional tension, it laid the foundations for it to become worse. And there was a growing moral question over slavery, with northern critics of the South. Anti-slavery society established in the 1830s, moral opposition to slavery became more mainstream. We can see evidence of this in Seward's higher law speech in 1850. There was a higher law than the Constitution, he said, and that was the moral law that said slavery was wrong. And we've got the publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin. So the existence of slavery and the way it was woven into the fabric of the very republic, this is the long-term reason why sectional tension grew 1803 to 53. But sectional tension increased in this period because politicians made some poor decisions about how to grow the country and how to deal with the slavery issue. And these political miscalculations are the things that help us to understand why sectional tension intensified in the period 1803 to 53.